We'd like to thank the sponsor, Game Up. They make a thirst-quenching adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. Comes in 4 great flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape.
That's right. And it's only 110 calories, low carb, so you don't have to feel guilty about enjoying it. Just like you don't have to feel guilty about enjoying us. UFC 308 review. Chevy, I really enjoyed this pay-per-view. At the same time, I didn't really enjoy it. So
yeah, it was tough, but yeah, good fights. Early card, so I can't be too upset about it.
Was there any fights you wanted to shout out before we get into the main card of this review?
Bummer, Chris Barnett got knocked out, hurt his leg throwing a spinning kick, ended up getting KO'd. Well, TKO'd after that. That was a bummer, but we can get right into this main card.
The Pirate.
Sharaputdin Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan.
Double spinning back fist by the Pirate, and he scores the win. It was just about as impressive as I think I've seen a performance of him so far in the UFC. Maybe working out some of those UFC jitters. Obviously, he's still going to be in trouble if he meets like a wrestler, you got to believe. But I like his call out at the end for Adesanya. Maybe it's a little ridiculous, but Adesanya, it'd be an intriguing fight. He's never done it. It's a striking matchup, and Adesanya's not going away. So, hey, I say it's a chance to put yourself on the marquee. Why not shoot your shot?
Yeah, I think you'll see Izzy maybe like put some feelers out and see if that's what people want. That's a favorable fight for Izzy, too, because he doesn't really want to be doing wrestling. He'd rather strike with guys. But Sharaputdin is someone that, is going to be as close to Izzy's level of striking as possible in the middleweight division. But yeah, he got a hand-picked opponent here with Petrosyan, someone who's guaranteed to kickbox with him and was on a skid. He threw that double spinning back fist, which was pretty cool. And they did show that he was working on that in like the open workouts. It wasn't just some random thing he threw. That's a planned attack. So very impressive. I hope that they never give him a wrestler and they just keep him as like a fun guy to lead off Middle East cards with, because he's fun to watch when he's striking.
Yeah, and it's nice because most of his fights are early too, so I can just enjoy them. I don't even feel guilty.
Yeah. Yes. Next fight, Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksander Rakic.
Oh, I think we've skipped one about Lerone Murphy.
Oh, was that before this one?
It was, yeah.
Okay. So Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige.
Ige? Trying to remember now. I thought he won the first round. And then I thought Murphy won the second, and then I thought Murphy did enough to win the third. But I remember watching this, and I thought that it wasn't. Unless I'm confusing this, I felt like I felt the same way with Ankalaev's fight too, though. I'm blanking out on this fight now. I remember I thought Murphy won, but I
thought Murphy
flyweight performance,
not dominated, but I could see him getting every round, to be honest, depending on how you scored the fight. But
I mean, at the end of the day, he's still undefeated. I say give this guy with a better ranking than him. I don't know if he's in the rankings right now at 15 or 10, but I'd say give him just a guy higher and see where we go here from that. I don't think he's ready for an elite featherweight. I don't think we're putting him with a top 5 yet, but I think the next step up will be someone in that top 10 maybe.
Yeah, maybe like a Bryce Mitchell or something like that would be fun. But shout out to Lerone Murphy. He's a real problem. I'm with you, though. Bring him along slowly because he's not dominating these guys, but getting the wins. He's a great, great striker. But not very cool, the UFC, like I was saying last week, to reward Dan Ige with, saving a fight for them on 1 hour's notice or whatever, to fly him halfway around the world to fight an undefeated, relatively unknown guy and lose. So I'm not impressed with the UFC there. Hope they hook Dan Ige up. I mean, they don't have to give him a quote unquote winnable fight because it's the UFC, but something more favorable than that. Come on, for real. We'll go back to Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksander Rakic.
So this was the fight I was more thinking was Ankalaev. Personally, I thought he won all the rounds, but I thought all these rounds were like very uneventful. At the same time, I can't say that he's not impressive though. Like he's neutralizing these top light heavyweights in the world. He's a good striker, but he's an even better wrestler. So if he comes up against an elite striker, he can take him down. I can't help but say, at one point, I dreaded this matchup with him and Alex Pereira because I feel like he's going to slow down the Pereira train. But now, Pereira has just been on such a roll, and he's so ready just to fight anybody. I'm just like, you know what? If this is what we're going to do, let's do it. I'm excited for it. And let's see if Pereira can handle this elite light heavyweight. Because if he does, there's really no reason not to send Alex Pereira up to heavyweight at that point and see what he could do. I had if Ankalaev beats Alex Pereira, well, so be it. I mean, we could still send Pereira up to heavyweight because I mean that's just the way that matchup works.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ankalaev, he's a bad man. Respect to him for being such a great wrestler, but wanting the fight to play out on the feet because really he is levels above Rakic on the ground. So for him to want to keep it on the feet, respect to him, as a fan. I'm with you. I think he's undeniable at this point. Poatan has to give him a title shot, and I'm with you. I'm excited to see that. I want to see how it plays out. Co-main event. Let's get sad. Robert Whitaker versus Khamzat Chimaev.
No excuses, but Robert Whitaker found himself in a bad position early. This is MMA, and I would have loved to see him be able to get back to his feet at some point just to see how this fight would have played out. But man, Chimaev was smart. He took him down fast and early, and he never let up. And you have to give the devil his due and how impressive he is. As nasty as it was to see and to happen to a good guy, that kind of strength in that position to just dislocate Robert Whitaker's jaw and rearrange his teeth, undeniable. This guy is a force. It also makes me wonder, too, how good is Kamaru Usman, who came off the bench at a higher weight? Like maybe this guy should be fighting at middleweight, but
right.
So that's something to consider, too. But at the end of the day, very impressive performance for Chimaev. And I feel like he's got to skip the line and get the title shot now against DDP. I won't be offended if he fights Strickland first, but and then DDP's waiting. So I don't know. But at the end of the day, I feel like this guy deserves a title shot. I mean, when you look at all the people, he won the title from Strickland, although it was very close.
Right. I thought Strickland won that fight. So I think you got to give it to Strickland. But I do understand how Khamzat is the draw and he might get it ahead of him because Strickland's fights have been very boring as of late. And, he talks all this shit and then the Middle East gives the UFC a lot of money right now and maybe they want a champion and Khamzat and maybe some pressure from that. Who knows?
I'll throw this out there. If they do Strickland and DDP next, I would not be against seeing Chimaev and Adesanya go just to see. I know it's a bad matchup for Stylebender.
I don't want to see that as a Izzy fan, but that makes sense.
Right.
Unfortunate for Robert. He talked about how he had that jaw injury. He's had it for his whole life. He actually had his teeth pushed in against DDP when he hit him. And this, it was already weakened. So he has to get it actually fixed now. So Khamzat was certainly winning, but I would have liked to see what happened. Obviously, if the fight had gone past that first round, he was all over him with the wrestling, though, and he was really mollywopping him just with the wrestling. So, respect to Khamzat, he's a monster. He has that tight squeeze, relentless takedowns. I don't think it's next, but the fight that I immediately think of with him is always Bo Nickel. I want to see that Bo Nickel fight. Now, at this point, I do think Bo needs to continue working on his striking for that to be, very evenly matched. But wrestling-wise, I want to see them wrestle. So, I think that's further down the line.
Quick side note before we go next fight. I thought about this earlier, but it really didn't have anything to do with it. But since you brought up Bo Nickel's name, another fight, stylistically a nightmare for people, but makes kind of sense to not rank their name. The Pirate versus Bo Nickel.
He fucks Sharaputdin up, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Unless he gets knocked out on the first shot if he takes him down once, it's over. So he needs to get knocked out before he gets that first takedown, and I don't think that happens. So
no, but name-wise and momentum-wise, I can just see where experience level could probably try that matchup. But I think
it'd be fun for sure while it lasted. Yeah. All right, and that was all the fights that happened, and we are gonna move on right now. Okay. All right, the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway.
Max was very impressive at the start of this. I was really feeling good about what we had talked about. I thought Max looked quick. I thought what we talked about with Max being susceptible to leg kicks too was still potentially there in the beginning. But, it was going on, and that made an exciting fight. What I had noticed, though, in particular, more than Max, Ilia, even when he was getting outstruck, I thought he was delivering the more powerful punches. He wasn't doing it often, but there'd be those moments where he just missed, and I'd be like, ooh. But I'm like, so there was always this danger, but I thought, silly me, I felt comfortable. I'm like, okay, this is going to be how this fight plays out. There's going to be, because it was like that with Justin Gaethje to a point too, right?
Yeah.
But then I thought, okay, they might just go swing it. Max was smart by not, and I love the little beginning where Max did the little bull taunt thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that right in the beginning, which was smart. But at the end of the day, man, Ilia, he kind of reminds me of Max a little bit in the beginning, where Max would sometimes lose rounds, but he was winning the whole fight. He was fighting the fight. And I feel like that's what he was doing. Difference being is, I think they said it, at featherweight, he might be the most powerful featherweight they've had in a long time. I think Conor was the only guy they were talking about at featherweight who was knocking people out like that.
Mm-hmm.
People don't remember that necessarily because Conor's become this huge megastar and there's all these other shenanigans, and his fights at lightweight have been a little up and down. He won the title, but then he never defended it, and then he lost when he came back. But Conor at featherweight had never lost in the UFC, and he smoked all these people. And this is kind of similar with Ilia. Well, I mean, Volkov came in afterwards looking for a fight. I could see why you do that because Volkov had cleaned out the division, even though he had those losses to Islam before with the brutal knockouts.
You mean Volkanovski?
Volkanovski, sorry, yes. But I personally don't hope they do that because I'd like to see Volkanovski actually get a win before he comes back, only because of the violent knockouts, and I think it'd be better for him just to have that kind of momentum going in. He
is older, though, so I think he's pushing for the...
I get it, and he deserves it. You can't deny it, and I think Dana said, everything he's done, he's going to get it. But Diego Lopez, that's the fight I'd like to see with Ilia. I don't know that he's going to beat Ilia, but we'll see how good his chin is because he can crack. And I think it's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you. Max was looking good, but he does get hit. And Ilia has just incredible power at 145 pounds, like you were saying, comparable to Conor when he was at 145. So I'm with you. Lopez could be the guy to beat him. I mean, Volkanovski could beat him. I just don't see that at this point. I think Ilia's really at his peak. I just don't think anyone's going to beat him. Maybe Lopez could catch him in something because he's so unpredictable and so difficult to deal with. But I don't see Volkanovski beating him at this point. But good for Ilia. Hope they do that card in Spain for him, at the Bernabeu. Real Madrid Stadium would be so cool. That would be a huge step for the UFC. I don't think UFC fans realize how historic that is and global that is. So that would be very cool if they can make that happen. And as far as Max, I think he needs to go back up to 145. I think there's just more fights for him there instead of him 155. Yeah, because otherwise he's got to go back in the queue at 145 and beat all these guys he's already beaten. You know who we haven't talked about could be fun against Topuria too, actually, is Yair.
Yeah.
He fights once a year or whatever, so we kind of forget about him. But stylistically, he could be very fun against Topuria.
Well, if they do that Volkanovski fight, Diego Lopez and Yair Rodriguez would be a fight that makes sense to me then, and that's a fun fight too. So
yeah, very, very fun fight. Yeah.
And for ours, Max, man, he's a BMF champ. He's still, he won that at lightweight. I know there's no real thing with that, but I mean, have him fight, maybe a Dan Hooker or somebody and put that BMF title on the line, right? Sign me up.
Have Conor actually come back and do a 165 or something catch weight, because I don't think Conor can make 155 anymore. And Max will fight at whatever weight. He doesn't give a shit, especially for the BMF belt. Then you can legitimize it with Conor, and it'll be a big draw, because obviously it'll be a pay-per-view because it's Conor, and it has to be for a title if it's on a pay-per-view, because for some reason that's the way the UFC works. So you can legitimize the BMF title and call that the title. So I could see that happening, but I don't, just because it's Conor, and I don't see him ever being disciplined enough to come back to fight.
Man, he's got that stuff with the bare knuckle fighting right now, but I thought he only has 2 more fights technically on his contract, right?
Yeah, that's part of the problem, I think, is the UFC is trying to give him stuff he doesn't want to get him to extend his contract. It's a whole dirty business. Yeah, they don't want him going anywhere. They want to own his rights until he's retired, and then they still hold the contract, so he can't retire and go somewhere else. So. But we'll see with this we'll see. I don't think that'll happen. I don't see Conor ever getting in the cage ever again as a fighter, maybe as a promoter for sure. But that would be cool for Max to get paid.
How old is Conor? He's still in his mid-30s, too?
Yeah, I think he's like 36. I think he's close to my age.
Now he could get a few more years. Like if he could get out of UFC, if he can fight 2 fights.
Right, 2 fights in a year. You're not over the hill yet. Yeah. Especially since he's taken so much time off. He's not really training and staying disciplined. He's out there ruining his body with drugs and alcohol. But
oh man, he'll be such a size differential. But he would want to probably try to box Jake Paul and do that fight.
Yeah, that's just money and also fame, which I think is a big part for him as well now. So
if you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store.